can't just marginalize folks and be like, well, this is the only way to address the problem.
Economic prosperity has come to an end.
What's going to work for me may not work for you.
All the young girls are beautiful. How do you compete with that?
Anytime I would be upset about something, be like, oh, you're a pussy.
I don't want medication.
I don't know what it's for.
Oh, well, this is the Middle of the Aisle podcast. I don't know if you saw my sign. It says, why are people so depressed? Sit here in the streets with people, and I just ask people to answer the question on the sign. We just talked about it. It's a tough question.
I think one of the reasons people are so depressed is a lack of resources and support. You know, limited housing, limited jobs.
You know, we got COVID, we got disease.
The change in family dynamics and structure, mass incarceration.
We got death.
Social isolation.
Overwhelming inflation that was going on in this world.
We have had about 40 years of economic prosperity and world stability, and recently that has come crashingly to an end, and that people are very afraid of the future, and they're losing hope that has buoyed us since really the late 1970s.
The cost of a burger was like $6. Nowadays it's up to $9, meaning everyone out here's got to work twice as hard just to get the basic things that they need, and that adds a lot of pressure on them.
I think it has to do with our work structure and the 5-day work week. When you enter the work world, you never really get time to just have really be yourself, have time for yourself. And also there's just so much stress that when you do get time to do your own thing, so you can't focus on it, you can't enjoy that happiness because there's so many other things in your brain.
You know, our parents could buy houses bagging groceries. You know what I'm saying? Like back in their day.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there nowadays. Like, there's a lot of programs for first-time home buyers. You can do little down payments and stuff, but that doesn't necessarily make it easier in the long run, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone's still got to work twice as hard.
I think that this is a blip. I think, you know, when you look at the economic downturn in the 70s, it lasted for a decade. I think we're going to have the upturn happening much shorter here. Like in 2008, it turned around in 2 years. I actually, in my heart of hearts, and by the way, I'm a health economist, so I'm cheating here a little bit, I think the economic indicators are that this is going to be relatively short-lived. Once the war in Ukraine ends, I think we're going to see, really decreases in gas prices, which everybody, if they see gas prices go up, they think the economy's over. There are a lot of positive indicators around employment. There are a lot of positive indicators around productivity with people working at home, for example. Mm-hmm. So I think there are a lot of positive indicators, and I can understand some people becoming depressed and pessimistic about the future. I am not one of them. I think, in fact, you are going to have a bright future because look at what you have. Podcasting didn't exist 30 years ago, and now people are multimillionaires by doing it. So I think your future is bright, and that's the best thing to communicate to people. This is a blip. This too shall pass.
I really love your optimism. It really means a lot. What is this guy doing, bro? He keeps running back and forth. This is like the third time he's done that. The other side of the world is basically at war right now.
Well, the other side of the world was always at war. We just didn't have the technology to know it.
The fact that we have access to unlimited information, and it's constantly bombarding us.
So now, since we have the technology to know everything in an instance, it seems depressing. But the world really hasn't changed that much.
So the more you understand the world and the systems going on, the more you realize it's not in favor for you.
Yeah. What's most important is your world. You should concentrate on your world and what's happening around you.
Have you ever dealt with depression before?
I'm gonna be so honest with you, I'm not gonna say I've dealt with depression, but there's hard times, but there's always a way to get out of it, you know? I feel like the depression comes when there's a lack of productivity, when there's a lot of laziness, because then that's when you're lazy and you're alone is when you start thinking too much. But when you're productive at the gym or whatever, that stuff kind of gets out on the way, or you just process that shit a lot better than if you're just sitting at home with a lack of productivity.
Have you ever dealt with depression personally?
Not personally, it's not like I've ever gone to a doctor and got, like diagnosed depression, but, everyone gets sad sometimes. And I do think that that's something that people need to recognize, that there's a big difference between being sad a lot of the time and actually being depressed,
I have to say I'm the worst person to ask about that. I really have never truly felt depressed, and I think it's because the boomer generation, all of us think our best days are ahead. So I'm, just turning 60, and I still think my best days are in front of me. They're not behind me. And it's hard to feel depressed if you feel like the best days are still yet to come.
What is depression?
State
of mind, right?
I can't hear you unless you sit down.
State of mind, right?
I
State
can't.
of mind.
This
What I
activates
do-
my
take
my
that
hearing aid.
equation out of people. You know what I mean? The depression.
Yeah, sit down.
I suppression. No, I'm not sitting down.
I can't talk to you unless
My
you sit
ministry's
down.
very busy.
I can't. It activates my hearing aids.
What?
The
Are
button
you
in the
giving me
chair.
right?
Yeah, if you sit. I mean, I guess you could take one. No one wants. Sure.
I'm very busy. Thank you.
All right, cool. Enjoy your Cliff Bars. We did get that on camera, right? Do you think social media has anything to do with depression in society today?
I recommend going through like your Instagram followers and just deleting people that you do not identify.
You got influencers, you got all these artists and stuff. They're like, oh, I'm in the club, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You feel like, oh, I'm not doing that.
My generation, like obviously, like there's a hope to be like famous. Obviously, like you have so many like artists to look up to. But like I feel like the generations now, like there's like TikTok, YouTube. Like I don't know, there's just so much happening, and they're like, oh my god, I'm gonna look at like Kendall Jenner, and I want to be like her, and like it just causes like a toxic cycle of eating and like just things like that.
Curated, that they're promoting an image that is not a realistic representation of what an average person's life can be like.
Facts.
And they're selling and making money off of it, and then you're over here thinking, oh, I need to be like.
A lot of people on social media also don't realize that like the people you see, like that you want that life, it's not actually the life they live. You know what I mean? It's all for show. They don't show the downside.
Everybody, all the people, all the young girls are beautiful. Everybody, because of the filters, they have, fancy cars. Everybody's a millionaire. Everybody makes tons of money. And how do you compare to that? How do you compete with that?
You have the perfect standards, What real people look like and what real people are doing is not always on social media.
Like I look at myself, I'm 55, and I look at other women like, gosh. Like,
I thought you were like a few years older than
love
me.
You. And I think, gosh, how do I compare to that? And these girls, these women look beautiful.
Have women that already have their own insecurities that have to look at the models and, the women who you feel have everything you could ever want and the hundreds of followers and thousands of followers. It plays on your self-esteem.
And then I realized, I have 3 children. I've raised a family. I've been with my husband since I was 19. So I can't compare, although you do get trapped in that. And it's so unrealistic and it's so unhealthy.
We saw a thing that was like girls kind of exposing themselves, and they're posting the pictures they normally post, and then they post the like untouched. But I'm like, that's great that you're exposing yourself, but why are you why are you keep doing it then? If you know that you're presenting a certain way and it's hurting like a lot of people's self-perception.
I personally stepped away from social media like 5 years ago. I think that was a big help. I'm not really religious, but like really like kind of finding value in like the moment and like just being present in the moment, not worrying about like long-term goals that don't matter.
I think that's really as religious as like just practical.
In general, especially the younger people, but even adults, we think that we have the stimulation of relationships, and a lot of times it's so superficial and not a true connection.
We're a social creature. We're supposed to be social. We kind of thrive off the energy of other people at the same time. And it's kind of like, I feel like that desire for being social is kind of being fed to us in the form of social media.
Just going out and doing something with somebody. Meeting people, having that sort of companionship. Like we're meant to have some sort of companionship. We're meant to be friends
social.
with people. We're meant to be social.
Dating in our generation, my generation, is a lot different because of social media. And a lot of social media does tend to ruin relationships because, like on the flip side, if people like, always having that false connection, like you said, people always feel the need, always feel like other people should be readily available for them. Like people feel like if they send me a text message, I have to answer it immediately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when it's okay to have alone time.
So if you're not answering, why aren't you answering?
Right.
But everybody has a phone with them non-stop nowadays.
You have free Kit Kats. Everyone loves Kit Kats. Do you feel like men deal with depression differently than women?
I think women have a lot more pressure on them. I
To
think
look
women
desirable or to be desirable.
Well, I think women more in touch with their feelings.
I think maybe socially it's more acceptable for a woman to feel down or depressed. I think as a society we're expected men to always be strong, always be in control, be our leader, kind of, be the one that's a strong one for the family or for the relationship, and then we don't allow him to feel moments where he's weak.
I think statistically, like suicide rates and stuff like that is much higher in men. And I think it's an overlooked thing because men aren't supposed to be emotionally vulnerable at all.
Supposed to be strong.
You know, even like my ex who's toxic, like anytime I would be upset about something, be like, oh, you're a pussy.
And then if he is feeling sad or weak, then I think a lot of times women then jump on that, like, oh, what's wrong with you? When instead of trying to lift them up and support the fact that, hey, he's human too, and he's expressing that he's feeling down.
Blah, blah, blah. Like, honestly, I think everybody has emotions and everybody deals with them in different ways, but the idea of attacking a man's self-worth for having those emotions and then bottling up or throwing them away or brushing them off and not getting in touch with them is definitely making the problem worse.
Yeah. Do you feel like depression is more prominent in younger people than older people?
Nowadays, yeah.
You think there's what do you think leads to that?
Phones, technology,
Social media.
I think we're just
It's more socially acceptable to say that you're depressed, where in previous generations that wasn't acceptable. You know, you dealt with stuff in the closet or in the church, but now everybody's depressed.
Do you have anything else you want to add? I officially have the second best haircut out here. My man's here has me beat.
Yeah, of course.
He's the only one out here with better hair than me, and I'll admit that. I have a hard time admitting that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Thanks, bro.
Take
Appreciate
care,
you, man.
Look, I think people need to get back to the basics. Universal laws. The first one, love yourself. Then the second one, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And by saying love your neighbor as you love yourself, that means non-judgmental. And if you can do that, you avoid a lot of pain and suffering.
You are why I have hope for this generation.
Thank you.
You doing this. Sir?
Thank you very
What
much.
a pleasure.
Would you like your Kit Kats, sir?
You know what? I'm going to take two because my
Yeah,
friends
absolutely.
over here listen.
You know, and sometimes depression is situational. We all have moments of depression. When we're talking about long-term depression, there are other factors that play a part. And we have to understand that the way that the brain is set up is different in every single body. Even though we have the same parts, the way that it functions is different. But I feel that more people want to talk about it now. But not enough people are acting on finding a solution to having cures. But mental health can't be taboo either, right? So you can't say that someone is depressed and then not give them the treatment that they need. Also understanding that just because someone is depressed doesn't mean that they want to stay and speak with a counselor. They don't want to talk to a therapist. Sometimes people who are depressed need to be out in the community doing outreach work. Others need to be out doing exercise or yoga. There's more than one way to treat the symptoms that cause people to be depressed. You can't just marginalize folks and be like, well, this is the only way to address the problem, because that's part of the issue. I can tell you if I'm depressed, but it doesn't mean that I want to speak to somebody about what's causing those symptoms. And people have a choice to choose. You know, there's some people that need to be out in the wilderness. That's therapeutic for them. Provide an outlet for those people. Some people want to draw or paint or color. Provide that outlet for them. Anything can be therapeutic if you say it's therapeutic for you. Somebody shouldn't be able to tell you what's going to work better for you. And that's why things are what they are, is we're not listening and we're not individualizing the treatment for each individual person. What's going to work for me may not work for you, and that has to be okay. We can't just say, here's the treatment, you got to take it. I don't want medication. There's a lot of people that don't want medication because it changes the dynamic of their brain and it makes them feel tired, or I can't get up, I don't want to go to work, or I'm angry with my wife all the time. Like, you got to think about what is going to work for the individual person whose symptoms you are trying to treat, and not for the masses.
That's the best take I've had this entire thing. That's the
Thank
best.
you.
That's the best take I've had.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you so. You want a Cliff Bar?